Have you ever sat in your favorite chair, looking out the window, and thought, I wish I had someone to share this moment with? Or maybe you've felt that quiet ache in your chest after a family gathering, when everyone's gone home, and the house feels just a little too still? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, so many of us over 70 find ourselves facing loneliness, even when we're surrounded by memories of a lifetime full of people and laughter. But here's the good news. Loneliness doesn't have to be a permanent chapter in your story. Today we're going to talk about 4 surprising ways to build new friendships, reignite old connections, and fill your days with the kind of warmth that comes from being truly seen and heard. And trust me, some of these ideas might just make you smile and think, why didn't I try this sooner? Let's start with the first step, something I like to call finding your tribe in unexpected places. Now, when we think of making friends, we often picture coffee shops, community centers, or maybe even the good old-fashioned front porch. But what if I told you that some of the most meaningful connections can happen in places you'd never expect? Take Margaret, for example. Margaret's a 74-year-old from Ohio who told me she'd spent years feeling invisible after her husband passed. One day, her granddaughter dragged her to a painting class at the local library. Not exactly Margaret's idea of a thrilling afternoon. But guess what? That class became her lifeline. She met Ruth, an 80-year-old former teacher with a knack for watercolors, and Tom, a retired mechanic who loved painting landscapes. Now, the 3 of them meet every Thursday to paint. And they've even started a weekly potluck dinner. Margaret's story isn't unique. Libraries, museums, even gardening clubs. These places are full of people just like you, looking for a little companionship. And here's the secret. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to show up. Try a class you've never considered before, calligraphy, birdwatching, even a beginner's yoga session. The activity itself is just the doorway. What happens once you walk through it is where the magic begins. Now let's talk about the second surprising way to build friendships, reconnecting with the past, but not how you'd think. When we hear reconnect, we often imagine tracking down old high school friends or distant relatives. But sometimes, the most powerful connections come from revisiting the moments that shaped us, not just the people. Let me explain. Have you ever dug out an old photo album and found yourself smiling at a picture of your neighbor from 30 years ago, the one who always brought over soup when you were sick? Or maybe you've kept a letter from a coworker who made you laugh during a tough project. Those memories aren't just nostalgia. They're clues. Here's what I want you to try. Pick up the phone and call someone you haven't spoken to in years. Not to catch up, but to thank them. Say something like, hey, I was thinking about that time you helped me fix my fence after the storm. I never properly thanked you. It meant the world to me. You'd be amazed how a conversation that starts with gratitude can reignite a friendship. Take George, a 78-year-old from Florida. He recently reached out to a buddy he'd served with in the Navy. They hadn't spoken in 50 years. George told me, I didn't even know if he'd remember me. But when I called, we talked for 2 hours. Now we email every week, sending each other bad jokes and old photos. And here's the thing. You don't need a grand gesture. A short note, a voicemail, even a handwritten letter can be the spark. It's not about reliving the past. It's about bringing its warmth into your present. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but what if I'm not ready to step out or pick up the phone? What if it feels too big? That's okay. Friendship isn't a race. It's a slow, steady walk. And sometimes, the smallest steps lead to the most beautiful paths. In the next part of our conversation, we'll explore 2 more surprising ways to build connections, including one idea that might have you laughing at how simple it is. But for now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever reconnected with someone from your past or tried a new hobby that led to friendship? Share your story in the comments below, because your experience could be the nudge someone else needs to take that first step. Remember, my friend, loneliness is a season, not a life sentence. And sometimes, all it takes is one small hello to change everything. Let's keep that conversation going, shall we? You know, sometimes the biggest barriers to connection aren't what's out there. They're the stories we tell ourselves. I'm too set in my ways. Or, who'd want to spend time with someone my age? But let me ask you this. Have you ever watched a child make a friend? They don't overthink it. They see someone building a sandcastle, walk over, and say, "Can I help?" Today, we're going to embrace that childlike simplicity with two more surprising ways to build friendships, starting with one that might feel a little modern. Let's call this third idea, friendship at your fingertips. The joy of virtual communities. Now, I know what you're thinking. Virtual? You mean those screens my grandkids are always glued to? Stay with me. Because while nothing replaces a face-to-face chat, the online world can be a surprising bridge to real, heartfelt connections, especially if getting out isn't always easy. Take Harold, an 82-year-old from Texas. Harold's arthritis makes it tough to leave the house most days, but his daughter helped him set up a tablet. Now, he's part of an online group called Classic Movie Lovers Over 70. Every Friday night, they watch the same film, Casablanca, Singin' in the Rain, and chat about it in real time. Harold told me, "It's like having a movie night with my old buddies from the Navy. We argue about Humphrey Bogart, share trivia, and someone always brings up their famous popcorn recipe." Here's how to start. Think of something you've loved for years. Gardening, mystery novels, baking pies. Now, type it into a search bar with the word online group or forum. You'll find communities buzzing with people who share your passions. And if technology feels intimidating, ask a grandkid or a neighbor to show you the ropes. Most folks love feeling needed, and you might just bond over the lesson. But what if you're craving something tangible, a connection you can see, hear, and share a laugh with in person? That brings us to our fourth surprising strategy, the magic of intergenerational friendship. Now, I'll admit, this one took me by surprise when I first tried it. A few years back, my local library started a program pairing seniors with teenagers for a story exchange. The teens would share a chapter of their favorite book, and we'd share a story from our lives. At first I thought, what could we possibly have in common? But let me tell you, those afternoons became the highlight of my month. One teen, Mia, asked me about the first job I ever had. I told her about working at a diner in the 1960s, and her eyes lit up. "That's so cool. Did they really have jukeboxes?" Next thing I knew, she'd brought her friends to hear more stories. We ended up hosting a decades night, where they dressed in vintage clothes, and I taught them the jitterbug. The beauty of intergenerational friendships is this. You get to be a guide and a student at the same time. Volunteer at a school reading program, offer to teach a skill like knitting or woodworking, or even join a community theater production. Younger people are hungry for wisdom, stories, and yes, someone who'll listen without judgment. And you'll rediscover the world through their curiosity. Now, I won't pretend every attempt will be smooth sailing. Maybe you'll join a virtual book club and realize you can't stand romance novels. Or perhaps the first teen you mentor will be more interested in their phone than your stories. That's okay. Friendship isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, again and again, with an open heart. Which reminds me of my neighbor, Evelyn. At 79, she signed up for a Tai Chi class at the community center. "I tripped over my own feet the first day," she laughed. "But the woman next to me tripped too. We helped each other up, and now we carpool every week." So whether it's clicking a join on an online group or sharing a skill with someone young enough to be your grandchild, remember, every connection starts with a single yes. In our final conversation, we'll tie all these ideas together and talk about how to keep those friendships thriving, because building a connection is one thing, but nurturing it, that's where the real joy lives. Until then, why not try one small thing this week? Send a meme to your grandkid, or Google a hobby you loved decades ago. And if you're feeling brave, share your plan in the comments. Let's cheer each other on, step by step. Let me tell you about my friend Clara. At 76, Clara told me she felt like her world was shrinking. Her kids lived across the country, her bridge club had dissolved, and days would pass where her only conversation was with the cashier at the grocery store. But then she remembered something her mother used to say, When the room feels too quiet, darling, be the one to hum the tune. So Clara decided to hum her own tune. Literally. She dug out her old guitar, the one she hadn't played since her 40s, and posted a flyer at her local community center. Senior seeking bandmates. No experience necessary. A week later, 3 people showed up at her door: a 68-year-old retired nurse with a harmonica, a 72-year-old former truck driver who'd always wanted to play the tambourine, and a 19-year-old college student studying music therapy. Fast forward 6 months, and they've got a name: the Second Act Band, and gigs booked at nursing homes and community festivals. But here's what Clara told me mattered most: we're not just making music. We're making sure no one in that room feels alone. Clara's story brings together everything we've talked about: showing up, embracing new tools, bridging generations, and letting gratitude guide you. But the heart of it all? Friendship isn't about numbers. It's about meaning. It's the knowing glance across a room when someone tells a joke only you get. The hand that squeezes yours when you're nervous. The voice on the phone that says, "I was just thinking about you." So how do you nurture these connections once they've begun? Let's talk about the art of keeping friendships alive. It's simpler than you might think. First, be the one to reach out. Don't wait for invitations. Create them. Text your new painting buddy: "I saw sunflowers at the market and thought of your last artwork. Coffee next week?" Forward a funny article to your online movie group: "This reminded me of our debate about Casablanca." Friendship thrives on tiny, consistent acts of "I see you." Second, mix the old with the new. Combine your hobbies with social time. Love gardening? Invite a friend to help plant herbs. Then share a meal using what you've grown. Enjoy puzzles? Host a monthly jigsaw and jazz night. The activity becomes the glue, but the laughter and stories are what stick. And third, this one's important: give yourself grace. Some friendships will fizzle. Others might feel one-sided for a while. That's okay. Focus on the connections that leave you feeling lighter, the ones where effort doesn't feel like work. Now, I know starting something new can feel daunting. Maybe you're thinking, what if I'm not good enough? What if they don't like me? Let me share a secret. Every person you meet is carrying their own quiet hope to be loved, heard, and valued. Your presence alone is a gift. Take a deep breath and begin. Sign up for that class. Send that email. Raise your hand at the community meeting. And if doubt creeps in, remember Clara and her tambourine-wielding truck driver. Remember George and his Navy buddy swapping jokes across decades. Remember you, your stories, your laughter, your worth, are a gift waiting to be shared. Before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with this. Loneliness may knock on your door, but you decide whether to let it in. Every morning, you get to choose. To step into the world with curiosity, to say yes to the small moments that become big memories. So go ahead. Bake those cookies and share them with your neighbor. Call the friend you've been meaning to reconnect with. Hit send on that forum post. However you start, know this: the world is brighter with you in it, and there's someone out there waiting to walk this path with you. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you'll try this week to open the door to connection? Let's inspire each other. And if you found this helpful, pass it along. Share it with a friend, a sibling, or someone who might need a gentle nudge to believe their best days are still ahead. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss our chats. Together, let's keep proving that life after 70 isn't about slowing down. It's about blooming in ways you never imagined. Here's to you, my friend, to the courage to begin, the wisdom to cherish each moment, and the friendships that make every day a little sweeter. Cheers.